All right, I'm Nan Whaley, the mayor of the city of Dayton. Today we've had a significant water main break that's already been isolated and identified. So we're going to have the city manager talk about the timeline, and then the director of water, Mike Powell, talk about the process moving forward regarding boil advisories and pressure. Okay, so Shelley's going to go first.
Thank you, Mayor. So approximately at 2:05, water staff first noticed the break. It was a very large amount of water at Kiwi and Monument. Crews started at 2:15 to locate the valves that would lead to trying to isolate the break. At 2:30, crews started increasing production at the Miami Water Treatment Plant. You'll remember that we have a completely redundant system, so both plants back up for one another. So we reconfigured at 2:30, reconfigured the Miami Water Treatment Plant to basically take on the production of Ottawa while we were trying to isolate. That helped boost production, and that helped keep the lower system from completely depressurizing. At 3:21, we were reviewing the supervisory control and data acquisition systems to basically monitor and identify additional operational problems. We also noticed, so this break primarily impacted the low pressure system. However, at 3:21, we noticed that the high pressure system was also starting to lose some pressure, and that we were starting to also notice our reservoirs were starting to empty. That was so those all were indicators that we had a very large main break that we were dealing with. However, the crews worked incredibly steadfastly and quickly. They quickly isolated or identified the right valves to get to be able to shut the water, control the water. The reservoirs are already filling, so those customers that experience loss of water or pressurization problems should over the next few hours really see a big difference, a big improvement in their water restoration. At 5:10, our crews started taking sampling so that we have to take samples whenever we think we're going to have to do a boil advisory. Those samples have to be tested to make sure that there weren't any bacteria, that's the word I was looking for, bacteria that got into the system that could cause illness. And so those are already being collected. They will be distributed later this evening, which means that the boil advisory will be able to be a much shorter period. Hopefully we'll be able to lift that fairly quickly. And then for the last half hour, we've been working with the OEPA on trying to really identify those specific areas that have to undergo a precautionary boil advisory. And again, that boil advisory is initiated when pressures go below 20 psi's. So in some of our industry or in some areas where we know where the pressure has dropped below 20, those will be the ones that are identified for the precautionary boil advisory. The rest of the systems, if they did not drop below that 20 psi, will be fine, and their pressures should be returned to normal very quickly. So I'll now turn it over to Mike Powell to talk a little bit about, for the next 12 plus hours, what will the work crews be doing and how will we be managing forward so that we can restore service to normal as quickly as possible. I do want to reiterate, we know that these water main breaks can be incredibly disruptive. They never happen at a good time. I want to assure the citizens that our staff as you can see by the timeline, worked very quickly, very steadfastly to get out there and correct for this as quickly as possible to minimize the disruption this has for our residents, for our customers, and that we value the service that we provide to our customers. So I'll turn over to Mike now.
Thank you, City Manager. Mike Powell, Director for the Department of Water. So as the City Manager mentioned, I don't think I could have said it any better. I always tease her being our best Water Department employee, even though she's the City Manager. But she said everything quite nicely. All of the things that she said is very, very accurate. I'm very appreciative of the kinds of crews that we've got that are able to respond in such quick fashion, identifying the things. Actually, our division manager for water utility field operations actually saw where it first happened when it happened. So we have a good idea of where the infrastructure is. There's lots of infrastructure in that area. So we actually made the choice of isolating the whole entire area instead of isolating it a piece at a time to help identify which exact mains would possibly be involved. So we'll have to excavate and actually be able to ascertain what actual infrastructure is involved. But we did that so that we could actually isolate the whole area, get the system back up and running as quickly as possible instead of taking more time to do investigations. So at this point, what we'll do is finish isolating the area, and once it's totally isolated, and if the weather cooperates, we'll start excavation. We will take a look at the infrastructure in that area to make sure what infrastructure has failed, what infrastructure is sound, and we'll start to make repairs. Some repairs might involve types of inventory that we have in stock for replacement and repair. We'll repair those things that we can. Other infrastructure, if it involves some of the like pre-stressed concrete main and things like that, that we don't necessarily do a lot of work in-house, we'll actually engage outside contractors that specialize in that sort of work to actually start that sort of repair. But as the City Manager mentioned, what we'll typically do also is we'll issue a precautionary boil advisory for any of the areas that experience low pressures. So if you lost water service, you would expect to receive a precautionary boil advisory. And anytime the water pressure gets below 20 psi, the EPA requires us to issue a precautionary boil advisory. So those things will be put together. We'll put together an interactive map, once again, of the areas that are impacted, so customers will be able to see if their area is impacted or not by the precautionary boil advisory. And we will collect these samples. Once again, the weather has to cooperate a little bit there too. We don't want to get false positives because of the rainwater and such. So as the weather cooperates, we'll be able to finish collecting the samples, get those results to the EPA, and be able to lift the boil advisories in a systematic fashion. So once this is isolated, and right now, as the City Manager mentioned, the storage that we have, both elevated storage and reservoirs, are filling as we speak. So as all the reservoirs continue to fill, the system continues to stabilize. Customers should see normal water pressures if they don't already have them very soon in the next few hours as things stabilize. And the system should be able to be used just as normal. That's because of the redundancy we have. Once things are isolated, the redundant pipes in the system pipe the water around those areas that are isolated to continue to deliver the water to our customers, while we can actually take those areas out of service and repair them. So once we make the repairs, we'll systematically put those areas back in service, but those things the customers won't even notice since because of the redundancy. So that's what to expect over the next day or two, and plus on into the future as we do these repairs.
So for the customers, to recap for the customers, within the next few hours, everyone should have full water. If they don't already have it, we're hearing everybody is back up. If you have over the next 2 hours and you do not have water pressure, you can call us at 333-4905. The boil advisory map will be up very soon at DaytonOhio.gov. Right, Tony, you're just going to put it right on the front page, so you can check to see if you're up for a boil advisory. Those are the key points I think that people will want to know. The other parts, the Water Department has done a fantastic job on this very large water main break. We'll take any questions.
Were you ever concerned about the water quality between the break and the point at which you showed the boil advisory map? Like, should people not have been using water in any capacity?
It's all about the pressure. So if you had pressure the whole time, you're fine. So it's really about when the pressure gets low. So if you've experienced, for example, a turn on and there was no water, your pressure's probably gone low. It's likely you'll need to boil. If you didn't experience that, and keep in mind, if you come home and you weren't home, you'll still have that bump. You'll feel that pressure on your water. So if you've experienced that, I would suggest you boil your water until the advisory is lifted. But we will have a map so you can also look that probably in the next hour. It is coming very soon. Not yet.
Can you speak to the size of the pipe and how it, I guess, compares to the water main break of February of last year?
I believe February of last year was a 36-inch pipe. We have in the vicinity of where the water director talked, we have a 48-inch, we have a 36-inch, and we have a 30-inch. So we believe one, if not two, of those broke. And if two broke, it would be because the first one damaged the second one as it broke. So we don't know at this point in time. We just know it was large because of the immediate loss of pressure. That's always an indicator of the size of pipe with a water main break, and we won't know really until we dig, because what we've done is by isolating those pipes, we've turned water off by shutting the valves off in all three of those pipes, and then we'll excavate, as the director said, to identify which ones and how they were compromised.
And then talk a little bit, Shelley, why last February was so hard.
Oh, yeah. So last February was incredibly difficult. If you recall, that break happened about 4:25 in the afternoon. It was in spring. We had a lot of rain, so the river water was very high, and it was a pipe that ran along the riverbed. And so there was no way to see turbidity in the river because it was so high, and it was such a large pipe breaking in an already overfilled river. It took a while for us to do the valve manipulation to build pressures back up to be able to create bubbles, because if you don't have the turbidity, you can't detect it. We knew it was somewhere in the river, but there's a lot of river and piping to check. Absolutely. As soon as these things happen, I contact and reach out to all the CEOs. And the mayor sends out a notice to all of the businesses in the downtown and in the city of Dayton, so everyone's on alert. Our own water staff immediately reach out to those customers' maintenance staff because they want to know what they're seeing and experiencing on their end. We do know that it was Children's Hospital that did not fall below the 20 PSI, however, Miami Valley will more than likely have to do some corrective measures with regard, because I believe their pressure did fall below, but those were the only two that I'm aware of. And Grandview has their own disinfecting system, so they really are independent of these boil advisories. So yes, we know it is terribly inconvenient. That's why we work so hard to address it so quickly, and because of the last thing we want to do is create problems for our businesses. The large area, pretty much the whole downtown was
out east. I mean,
yeah. I do know that many of the restaurants had to close because of the lack of water for this evening, but I don't know the whole scope of the impact. We don't know. I don't think I know that yet.
No, but I would hazard a guess that they were 1,800 years.
Just moving forward, like, I'm sorry, I didn't see like a notice saying, boil advisory. Just if your water pressure is 2 feet at all, will it all need to boil your water?
Yeah, because it's in process right now. They're working with the OEPA to have the details, be able to show the impacted areas, get the blessing from the EPA, then they will issue the boil advisory. So basically, as the mayor described it, if you came home and you turned on your faucet and there was no water, or there was a big gasping, gurgling air, a lot of air, whatever, then your pressures have been disrupted. And so as a precaution, we would encourage people to boil water until they can go on our website and check that map out, put in their address, and see if their address is an area that's suggested to have a boil advisory.
Forgive me if I missed this, but are other Montgomery County residents still encouraged to conserve water, or has that been lifted?
There is no, because of the reservoirs are filling now and the pressures are returning, we have not directed any of the other businesses or other residents to conserve water at this point.
Any idea what the likely source of the problem is?
Well,
No.
pipe broke.
Yeah, we know it was a pipe that broke. We think we, have some idea about the age of the pipe, but again, we won't know that until we really excavate the area and can take a look at it.
Economic cost to the city involved with this?
The costs are, we always have capital funding that is set aside for repairs like this and for reinvestment. So as we take a look at that and identify the pipes or the infrastructure that needs to be replaced, then we would use that funding to be able to make the repair, improve the investment, improve the piping, replace the piping, et cetera.
Did responding to last year's water main break help with this year? Like, you guys already had the interactive map kind of ready to go?
Yeah, we're really good at disasters.
We were just glad to have one that was one and done, right, and not ongoing forever. So yes, there were things, and you will recall, we talked about, our debrief after every crisis. We do debriefs. We identify things that if this were to happen again, how would we do better? What would we do now? And so there were a couple of things. One is the map. GIS map is ready to go. It's kind of a plug and play at this point, and so we just have to put the pertinent information and then send it out, and people can access it. It's a really easy way to communicate. The other thing that was really important is paying attention and investing in and upgrading our valves, because if you recall, in February, many of those valves were way under water from the river being so high. And in this case, our field workers were operating in knee-high water because there was so much water. But because they had been out working on upgrading the valves, they were very familiar, first of all, of where those valve boxes were. The valve boxes themselves had been improved so that they were much easier to get to and access, and the tool to shut those valves off very quickly. So that is another way or reason why the water staff were able to contain this so quickly, because of some of that proactive work we did after the February break.
Can I say one more thing too, Shelley?
Yeah.
I've gotten a couple of text messages and folks asking should they go to work. It'll be fine tomorrow. Go to work. We might still be under a boil advisory early in the day, but we'll work to move that quickly. But the reserves for the pressure should be back and fine. So, you should really be fine this evening. Okay?
How long should people avoid the area? I know you talked about excavating and things like that.
We'll have updates on that for a while. I know when we've had to shut the street down, we try to communicate that, and we'll continue to do that through this process.
The lion's share of the work will be
Inside.
inside the fence at Ottawa Yard, so it will not disrupt traffic. When we're excavating and things, it won't interfere with traffic like the water did today.
Is that the exact location of the break, is
Inside the yard, yeah. So it's
Monument, or on?
Kiwi and First, inside the fence.
Okay, you guys good? Thank you for coming in. Thank you for our interpreters, and have a good evening. Stay safe.